What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about something that is extremely important and can absolutely change the direction of your fantasy playoffs. It can absolutely determine whether you win or lose a championship, so you're gonna want to listen up. This isn't gonna be the full official playoff guide. I'm gonna release that in the next week or so, but I thought I would release this today because today is the Yahoo trade deadline. It might be different on other platforms, but February 28th is the last day you can make trades. And the information that I give you in this video can absolutely help you make those trades and potentially help you win a championship. For this video, I'm not going to go over the overall schedule for your playoff weeks, but I will be going over the teams that have very good schedules week to week, and also the teams that have really bad schedules week to week. So this will help you determine which players you might want to trade away today or which players that you might have to drop heading into your fantasy playoffs. With that being said, this is all about maximizing your games. The amount of games that you have in a playoff week can absolutely determine if you win that week. It could be the #1 factor in you winning that week. So if you are like me and you're looking weeks ahead and you're trying to maximize your games, this video will be perfect for you. Let me give you guys an example on how to maximize your games and how you might want to maximize your games with a trade or with an ad on the waiver wire, okay? In one of my leagues, I am trying to shop Brock Nelson. Unsuccessfully, unfortunately, nobody has been on my trade requests. But the reason I'm shopping him is because in my first playoff week, which will be week 24, in this league, I'm in first place, so I have a bye. Weeks 23 to 25, I don't care about week 23. I only care about week 24 and week 25. In that week 24 week, the Islanders only have 2 games. None of these games are on off nights either. They're on heavy nights. They are on Thursday and Saturday. So that is really tough. Not only am I having Brock Nelson on this team, but I also have Matt Barzal on this team. So that week, I'm going to have 2 players on a team that only plays twice. And that's not very good. What I do want to say is that week 25, the Islanders actually have a pretty good schedule. That would be the finals week in my playoff weeks. They have 4 games and 2 off nights that week, and that's pretty good. So having Brock Nelson during that week would be great. But the thing is, I don't want to risk not making it to the finals. So this is ultimately an independent decision. It's going to come down to the makeup of your team. It's going to come down to how comfortable you are in that specific matchup on that week. But for me, I'm just trying to maximize my chances of making it to the finals and guaranteeing myself money in that league. And I think that's ultimately the best strategy to win money in your fantasy hockey leagues. You're trying to maximize your games week to week to try and get to the finals, okay? That is the strategy that I would propose for you in your fantasy playoffs, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Now, I haven't been able to successfully trade Brock Nelson just yet. Maybe I will by the end of today. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Hopefully my league mates do not watch this video, but what I was trying to do earlier on is trade Brock Nelson for Alex Tuch. The reason I was doing this is because if you guys take a look right here on the week 24 schedule, there are only 2 teams that have 2 off nights. These teams are the Buffalo Sabres and the Vancouver Canucks. As I told you, the Islanders this week only have 2 games on Thursday and Saturday. So by completing a trade like Brock Nelson for Alex Tuch, I'm going to maximize my games. For this week, there's not a lot of teams with off nights, so you're going to have a lot of players you're benching on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. That kind of sucks. It always sucks to bench players and watch them go off, as you guys all know. If I did that trade, I would basically trade Nelson away and then replace his games with a guy that was on the bench on Thursday and Saturday, and then I would get 2 off nights from Tuch. So I'm getting 2 more games out of a player that could have similar fantasy points. Now you might be thinking to yourself, 2 games is really not that much, but you guys know in close matchups that, 10 to 20 fantasy points could determine your week. So that does matter. And also, to paint a very clear picture for you, I'll give you guys an example. Dylan Strome is on this specific fantasy team that I'm talking about here. And the Capitals, they also play Thursday and Saturday. So if I had Brock Nelson in my lineup, I probably would have to sit Dylan Strome on those nights. I'm basically, if I were to make the Brock Nelson for Alex Tuch trade, I would be basically getting 3 games from Tuch, including 2 off nights, and then 2 games from Dylan Strome versus only 2 games from Brock Nelson. So that's 5 versus 2. It makes sense, guys. Making these types of trades really helps you maximize your fantasy points, and can really help you win your fantasy week. With that being said, guys, I'm not going to be going over specific players. That would take way too long. Again, this was an impromptu video that I thought I needed to do for the trade deadline. So I'm just going to go over the teams with bad weekly schedules and also good weekly schedules ranging from week 21 to week 26. Okay, so let's dive right into it. All right, guys, we're going to go week by week. We're going to be looking at the teams that only play twice versus the teams that have good schedules and good off nights. This will help you decide if you want to trade some of these players away on teams that have bad schedules for the players on teams with good schedules, and also some potential drops / adds that you might have to make in the next couple of weeks. All right, guys, week 21, March 4th to March 10th. I know a lot of you probably don't have this as a playoff week, but some of you do. And with this week, we have 3 teams that only play twice. These teams are the New York Rangers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Washington Capitals. This might cost you if you have a lot of players on these teams. So what you could do is either drop / trade away some players on these teams for players on teams with good off nights and a lot of games. As you guys can see here, these are the teams with the most off nights. We have 2 teams that play 3 times and all of them are off nights. Those teams being the Colorado Avalanche and the Anaheim Ducks. We also have some teams that play 4 games and 2 off nights this week. These teams being the Coyotes, the Flames, the Blackhawks, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Moving on to week 22, this is March 11th to March 17th. We have 5 teams that only play twice this week. These teams are the Oilers, the Predators, the Tampa Bay Lightning again, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Vancouver Canucks. The Jets have 4 games and 4 off nights, which is incredible. The Canes have 4 games and 3 off nights. The Blues have 4 games and 3 off nights. Rangers, 5 games and 2 off nights, like I said. And then we have the Ducks, the Devils, the Islanders, and the Capitals all having 4 games and 2 off nights. I can make an argument easily that I would rather have Gabriel Vilardi this week than Braden Point. Vilardi has 4 games and 4 off nights this week versus the Tampa Bay Lightning only having 2 games and 0 of these games being off nights. So yeah, that's the problem with having players on these teams. And that's why you do want to do a lot of research into making adds and drops and also potentially trading some of these players away. Moving on to week 23, this is from March 18th to March 24th. We have no teams that only play twice, okay? Each team plays at least 3 games, so this is good news. You don't have to worry about having a bunch of players that only play twice. There are a couple of teams that have really good off-night schedules though, so you could potentially trade a player on a team that has 3 games and 0 off nights for a player on a team that has 4 games and 3 off nights, like the Washington Capitals. As you guys can see here, the Coyotes and the Stars have 3 games and 2 off nights. The Kraken have 4 games and 2 off nights. This is pretty good, but yeah, no teams that only play twice. You don't really have to make any moves here, but if you do want to get a little bit crazy in terms of maximizing your games, it could be wise to drop a player on some of these teams that have 3 games and 0 off nights for a player on the Washington Capitals, right? You're going to gain games from doing this. Moving on to week 24, this is from March 25th to March 31st. I showed you guys this in the beginning of the video, but we do have a lot of teams that only play twice this week. These teams being the Minnesota Wild, the New Jersey Devils, the New York Islanders, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So this is going to be tough for you this week if you have a lot of players on these teams like I do in this league, having Matt Barzal and Brock Nelson. And that's why I told you about the example of trying to trade him away for a player that has a good off-night schedule this week. And as I showed you earlier, the Sabres and the Canucks have 3 games and 2 off nights. So I tried to do this. It didn't work. Maybe you guys can do this if you are in a similar situation to me. But yeah, not a lot of teams here that have amazing off-night schedules. We do have the Golden Knights and the Ducks having 4 games and 1 off night, but you're not going to gain a lot of games unless these teams have more than 1 off night. You need to have a team that has at least 2 off nights to really gain those games. So I would look at trading potentially some of the players on teams that only play twice this week for players on the Buffalo Sabres and the Vancouver Canucks. I also wanted to say that I know I'm saying trade, and most of you that are watching this video, it's going to be past the trade deadline. I'm also talking about adding and dropping players. So for example, if we're looking at the least amount of games, like I told you for this week, a player on the Islanders like Brock Nelson, you might have to drop Brock Nelson for a player on the Vancouver Canucks. Maybe a guy like Elias Lindholm, if he's available. Maybe a guy like Jeff Skinner on the Buffalo Sabres, if he's available. These could be viable options in terms of maximizing your games. All right, lastly, guys, we have week 25. For a lot of people, this is going to be their final playoff week. And in terms of the teams that only play twice this week, we only have one team, and that team is the Vegas Golden Knights. They do have 2 of these games being off nights, which is great. So 2 games and 2 off nights. It's not the worst thing in the world, but we do have some teams with really good schedules in terms of off nights. These teams are the Edmonton Oilers and the New York Rangers. They have 4 games and 3 off nights. This is very good. The Kraken having 3 games and 3 off nights. And we also have a bunch of teams that have 4 games and 2 off nights here. The Colorado Avalanche, the Florida Panthers, the Los Angeles Kings, the New Jersey Devils, the New York Islanders, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Tampa Bay Lightning, and also the Washington Capitals. With that being said, if you're watching this video today and you want to make a trade, maybe you could trade a player like William Karlsson away. Maybe you could trade a player like Jonathan Marchessault. These could be good options to trade away for some players on teams with a lot of off nights. For example, Evander Kane, maybe, maybe potentially Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, just examples that pop into my head, but you can take a look on, the fantasy website to see which players are on these teams that could make a trade work. You also could drop a player like William Karlsson for a player on the Oilers or the Rangers. You don't necessarily have to do this right now. You could just wait until your final week, your finals in the fantasy playoffs. But this is something worth noting, that if you have a lot of Vegas players and you want to win a fantasy championship, this could cost you in your finals week. In conclusion, what you guys might want to do is send out some trades today if you feel that some of the players on your team will impact your fantasy playoffs. For example, like I told you, Brock Nelson, me having Barzal and Brock Nelson and them only playing twice in my first playoff week. If you are in a similar situation, you can either send out some trades today or you could drop them while you're ahead and pick up somebody that has a really good schedule in your first playoff week. So I hope this information was useful for you guys. I know it was useful for me in terms of figuring out what I want to do for my fantasy playoffs. So drop a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.